Hello and welcome back to the Wasteland, everybody. Today we're going to be talking about the top 10 best unarmed weapons in New Vegas, and this time I am set to record. I wasn't recording my camera earlier, so this is going to be take 2. These weapons aren't in any particular order, just like a lot of these top 10 lists, because some of them get better or worse depending on when you get them. Let's go through them. Starting out at number 10, we have She's Embrace. She's Embrace is the unique Yaogwai gauntlet. You can get this in Zion. You do have to do a quest to do it, and it's a pretty funny quest. Take drugs, kill a bear, the bear's on fire and teleports and clones more of itself. Very weird, but a very fun quest to do, and you are rewarded with She's Embrace at the end of this quest. The Yaogwai gauntlet doesn't have too high requirements compared to, well, actually most unarmed weapons don't have too high requirements, but compared to some of them like the Ballistic Fist, it's not super high. This one has okay damage per hit, pretty decent damage per second, has a 3x crit modifier with good crit damage, so that's a bonus, has low action point cost. This one also ignores damage threshold and damage resist, similar to things like the chainsaw and the thermic lance and another weapon that we're going to be talking about here in a little bit. And this thing has a massive amount of HP, coming in at like 900, so it takes forever for this thing to break. It is only repaired by Yaogwai gauntlets, unless you got jury rigging, then it's not such a big deal. And this does weigh 10, so taking something like heavyweight can cut this in half. She's Embrace is a pretty solid weapon, and if you didn't run to Zion with any weapons or with minimal weapons, and you're going with an unarmed build, this one might be a pretty good option for you. Coming in at number 9, we have the Paladin Toaster. The Paladin Toaster is the unique Zap Glove, not Displacer Glove, unique Zap Glove, and this one you can find inside of a cave with some Nightkin. It is a pretty strong weapon and you can get it fairly early on. It doesn't have too high requirements, at least in terms of strength. Does good damage per hit, pretty good damage per second, has an average crit modifier, good crit damage, okay action point cost, and it also has the bonus of dealing extra damage to bots and to power armor users. That can be pretty good, especially if you want to grab this early and then head to Old World Blues. This also doesn't weigh too much. It doesn't have the most item health either, but that's okay, especially if you're just planning on running to Old World Blues and just using this on like the Robo Scorpions. Coming in at number 8, we've got Embrace the Mantis King. This is probably one of the most underrated weapons in Fallout New Vegas. I think it's mostly because a lot of people don't even realize that this thing exists. You do have to buy this one because it is a gunrunner arsenal weapon. You have to buy this from Mick and Ralph's, which is a little bit unusual. This one has pretty low requirements. It does good damage per hit, really good damage per second, has a 3x crit modifier with high crit damage, which is fantastic. This one also doesn't have too high of action point cost, although weirdly enough, this one does weigh a lot. It weighs 12. So again, heavyweight can cut this in half down to 6. That's pretty nice. And this doesn't have the most amount of HP, but by the time you're able to buy this and you're getting around a free side, you're probably going to be around level 14-ish. So you might be able to get jury rigging then, and then it won't be an issue because you can just repair it with any unarmed weapon. Coming in at number 7, we've got the Ballistic Fist and the Two-Step Goodbye. I would wrap both of them in here. Depends on what you like to use. I like the Ballistic Fist a little bit more because you can't friendly fire yourself as easy. And a lot of the time I'm playing on hardcore and it's really easy to break limbs and it's kind of annoying to get doctor's bags or keep having to run back to the clinic. This one does have one of the highest requirements out of any weapon, requiring 100 unarmed and 9 strength. It does really high damage per hit, pretty high damage per second, although it doesn't attack as fast as some of the other weapons we've talked about. Has an average crit modifier with good crit damage, at least on the Ballistic Fist. Two-Step Goodbye is lower, but then it causes an explosion upon death, so it can potentially have even more DPS. Just depends on what you like. It can also hit you, so that's why I don't use it too much. Doesn't weigh too much and doesn't have the most amount of item health. Ballistic Fists are kind of difficult to get. The Two-Step Goodbye is potentially easier because you just have to buy it from the Vendatron, but it's still going to cost you a lot of money. Either way, they're both really good unarmed weapons, and they can be a lot of fun to deal just really high damage with. You can always take these off the Legion too, at least that are guarding around Caesar, assuming you can kill them and take it. Coming in at number 6, we've got Pushy. Pushy is the unique Displacer Glove, and this one has very low requirements, at least in terms of strength. It only requires 2 strength, so even if you went with a 1 strength build, you could still get the strength upgrade or strength implant in New Vegas, and you could use this on any character, which is pretty cool, assuming you also hit the 100 unarmed, or at least 100 unarmed so that you can get more damage from this. This one does good damage per hit, very good damage per second, has an average crit modifier with good crit damage, doesn't have too high of an action point cost. All around, this one is just a really solid weapon. It's also very easy to get if you know where to go. You just have to go north of New Vegas and then just go up to the mine up there. You can grab it. There are lake larks around and they are kind of scary in the early game, but it could be worth it because Pushy is a very solid weapon. Coming in at number 5, we have Love and Hate. Love and Hate is probably one of my favorite early game weapons that you can get like right out the start if you wanted to. This is the unique Spike Knuckles. You can find these just north of Good Springs, past where you would go with the Cazadors and where you could find Chance's knife. If you go a little bit further in there, there is a town out there, and there's some raiders that have this. One of them has love and hate, and she's got some plasma grenades, which are pretty scary early game. And she's also got combat armor, which can be worth a lot, or it can be pretty decent armor if you want to wear it. And then there's also another raider leader with them that has metal armor, and he's got a trail carbine, which is kind of scary at the start too. If you do manage to kill them though, you can get all of that gear, and love and hate is part of that. Love and hate doesn't have very high requirements whatsoever. It has good damage per hit, very good damage per second, has an average crit modifier with average crit damage, has good action point cost, only weighs 1, and has a ton of health. This is also considered a holdout weapon, so you can sneak this into places like casinos, and that makes it really strong. If you wanted to go straight north of here and just grab Chance's knife and grab love and hate, you would be set for a very strong unarmed and melee build, or combo build, if you're running both of them, and that's a perfectly legitimate strategy. You also don't necessarily need to get something like jury rigging for this, because it can already use things like brass knuckles and spike knuckles to repair itself, and those are probably going to be the most common things that you're finding, at least in terms of unarmed, besides maybe like boxing tape early on. Coming in at number 4, we have the Saturnite Fist Superheated. This is kind of the unique version of the Saturnite Fist, although you can make as many of these as you would like. You just have to talk to the Toaster, and I believe get him an upgrade. This one does pretty high damage per hit. It does even more damage per hit with something like the Pyromaniac perk though, and this is probably one of the best weapons to be using that perk with. And if you do have that, then its damage per second also scales really high. It does an insane amount of DPS. It's probably one of the best of all unarmed weapons. It has an okay crit modifier with decent crit damage, actually pretty good crit damage compared to like the other power fists. Not too high of an action point cost, and it also inflicts fire on enemies, which is just kind of an added bonus. It does also have decent item health with not weighing too much and only 4. These weapons are really good to rush early on if you wanted to do a dedicated unarmed build. This is definitely one of the ones that you could have and maybe should go for early on, because if you get Pyromaniac and you get all the other unarmed perks like Piercing Strike and Super Slam, this one becomes pretty insane. Coming in at number 3, we have Grease Lightning. Grease Lightning is one of the many unique power fists in the game. This one doesn't have high requirements. You do have to buy this one though, because it is in the Gunrunner's Arsenal DLC, but you don't buy it from the Gunrunners. You buy it from the Brotherhood, assuming the Brotherhood is still alive. If they're dead, then you will buy it from the Gunrunners. This one does good damage per hit, very high damage per second. This one attacks super quick. It's really good for abusing like Super Slam. It takes advantage of that perk really, really well. It has an average crit multiplier with good crit damage, low action point cost, kind of, and has pretty good item health. It actually takes a while for this one to break compared to some of the other power fists. This one's attack speed is where it really shines, and it just lets you hammer away at anything. Super Slam is super strong with unarmed and melee. If you're able to knock something down, it can't fight back. And with a weapon like this, you're probably going to be able to kill it before it can get back up, assuming there aren't multiple other enemies trying to attack you. Coming in at number 2, we have the Industrial Hand. The Industrial Hand is basically the Ripper or the Chainsaw of unarmed weapons. This one is another unique power fist. Technically, it doesn't really attack like power fist. It doesn't punch. You just hold it out on an enemy and just keep chopping them up with a saw blade. This one has a decent strength requirement, coming in at 7. This one has good damage per hit. Kind of. It has a lot of damage per second, and that's mostly where your damage is going to be coming from. This one also surprisingly has good crit damage too. Not as high as its base damage, but that doesn't really matter when you can just hold this on something and just keep hitting crits. That's actually pretty insane, because things like the Chainsaw, the Ripper, and the Thermic Lance have extremely low crit damage. This one doesn't. This one's actually pretty good, so a crit build is still really strong on this one. This one does have high action point requirements though, just like the Chainsaw and the Thermic Lance. And just like those weapons, this one also ignores damage threshold and damage resist, so it doesn't matter how tanky the enemy is, you're going to be hitting them consistently regardless. Does weigh a decent amount at 10, so heavyweight could also cut this in half. And this has a ton of HP, but it's a weapon similar to the Ripper or the Chainsaw, so it kind of needs that, otherwise it would break itself super quick. You can only get the Industrial Hand about midway through the Lonesome Road, before you go to the underground and right as you're about to fire the other missile. So you're going to have to go about halfway through probably the hardest DLC in the game to get this, but it is totally worth it. It's a very good weapon. And speaking of the Lonesome Road, coming in at number 1, we have the Fist of Raar, or the Fist of the North Raar, if you have Wild Wasteland, which is a homage to a completely insane anime from the 80s. Nani? It's actually pretty good if you've never seen it before. You get this one in the Lonesome Road, and you get it from Raar himself. Raar is a named Deathclaw, and if you know anything about Deathclaws in New Vegas, they are terrifying, and if they have a name, or a title, or any sort of thing on there, they're even more terrifying, and Raar is definitely that. He is probably one of the strongest enemies in the entire game, He deals extremely high damage, he's pretty tanky, and you have to fight him in a pretty small area. Luckily, he does give you a couple of hits or a big opening to where you can hit him right at the start of the fight, and you're probably going to want to kill him really quick there. Once you do kill him, you can take his hand, and then you get the Hand of Raar, which is counted as a quest item, and I'll talk about that in a second because it does kind of come into play. The Fist of Raar does require 6 strength in order for you to wield it, and 100 unarmed, which would kind of make sense with this one. It does high damage per hit, very high damage per second, has a 2x crit modifier with extremely high crit damage, which is great. This one also has fairly low action point costs, and this one also has the unique ability of doing double limb damage, so you can cripple limbs even easier with this thing. It's great. Only downside is it doesn't have the most health, and it does weigh 10, so again, heavyweight could cut this down to 5, which makes it a little bit more manageable. Since this is counted as a quest item though, it absolutely destroys Dead Money as a DLC because you can just take this right into Dead Money, not actually the Fist of Raar. In order to make this, you do need to interact with a workbench, but if you just take the Hand of Raar into Dead Money, it can't be taken away at the start of that DLC because it counts as a quest item, so it always remains in your bag. This is the same way with like the camera and with the teleporter. If you take just the handing, you can make this, and it is an insanely strong weapon against the ghost people. It's just an insanely strong weapon in general. Clears through them really easily. The Bear Trap Fish should also be kind of an honorable mention here, talking about Dead Money, because it also makes that DLC very easy. If you're going there with an unarmed build, you're going to have an easy time compared to everybody else. It is really strong against the ghost people because that and the Fist of Raar have such a high chance of dismemberment, and which will instantly kill the ghost people. So that's great. Thank you guys so very much for watching this. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Tell me what your favorite unarmed weapons are down in the comments below. I'd really be curious about that, and why do you like them so much? A lot of the unarmed weapons in New Vegas are actually quite strong. There's not a whole lot of weak ones besides things like maybe boxing gloves, which kind of have a niche, but I feel like boxing tape kind of does their job better, but that's kind of beside the point. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I will talk to you next time. Bye-bye.